Okay, good afternoon, everybody. John Staines from Office of Aviation. I'm sure everybody knows me. Today we're talking about our grant process, and really what Stacy reached out to me to talk about was how to maximize your score. Go through kind of the scoring process, um, and kind of go through how we rank and score the applications that we get in, and kind of go through in detail that aspect of it. We'll do that. We're going to go through just as an overview. We'll go through what grant programs are available, grant eligibility as far as projects and airports. We'll go through our procedure kind of quickly, and then we'll get into how each category is scored, what resources are available, and then we'll have plenty of time for question and answer. So jumping into our grant programs, we have 3 different grant programs. The matching grant program for general aviation airports. This is the program where we provide half of the local share of all FAA AIP funded projects that go to general aviation airports. So those are the airports that do not receive passenger or cargo entitlements. The matching grant program are awarded automatically based on the application. You do have to apply for the funding, but there is no scoring or ranking process with those. The current year, we suspended the program because all of the FAA grants are 100%, but assuming they go back to their typical 90% FAA, 10% local, we will reinstitute that at that point. We also have the matching grant program for commercial service airports. This is similar to the GA matching grant program, except that the program is capped. For fiscal year 2020, it was capped at $500,000. That was split up equally among the commercial service airports, and that grant program was intended not to exceed 5% of the total cost of the FAA AIP projects. So it is capped. That's the only difference. Again, it's not scored or ranked. It's based on just on the application. And then mostly what we're talking about today is our direct grant program. The direct grant program is intended to provide funding to our publicly owned airports that do not receive FAA passenger or air cargo entitlements. So these are our GA airports. The projects include safety improvements and maintenance, including design and construction services as well. And these projects, these are our state-funded projects. For fiscal year 21, they were all 100%, but likely we'll be moving back to a 95.5 coming up in the next fiscal year. And with these projects, with the direct grant projects, they're select based on the scoring criteria that we put in our procedure document, and also based on the available funding. So they're competitive grants. Grant eligibility. On our website, we do publish each year the eligible airports. If you go to our website where the red arrow is each year, and we do have some changes from time to time. If an airport goes to commercial service from GA or the opposite direction, it would change which program you would be eligible for. I would assume most airports know where they fit, but we do publish that list on our website here, and that's updated every year. Pulls up a document that looks like this, and just kind of highlighting we have the airport, base city, and then which of the programs they would be eligible for. So most GA airports would be eligible for the direct grant program. If you're an IPIS airport, you would also be eligible for the matching grant program. So for the direct grant procedure, each year we do publish a procedure that would apply for the upcoming fiscal year. And this is it's done for each grant program, but for the direct grant program, it is published, and this includes all the information regarding what's eligible project-wise, the scoring criteria that's used, and all the information related to the direct grant program. We do publish it online on the Office of Aviation website. It's also in Black Cat Aviation System, and this is put together and done and published usually around March 1st when we open the grant application season. So what we'll be talking about today is the one that is in place currently for fiscal year 21. We will be at some point after the first of the year reviewing the document and making any necessary changes for fiscal year 22. And like I said, that'll come out likely around March 1st. So it's important to look at the grant procedure document. You can't assume it's going to be identical to the previous year, but make sure you pull this down and read it in detail to pick up on any changes, and we'll try and highlight any changes through our notification process. Like I said, we'll review this probably in January, starting in January. I don't anticipate too many changes moving forward, with the exception of I doubt that we'll be 100% funded on the state grant projects moving forward. I anticipate we'll go back to a 95-5 split for 22, but all that will be determined coming up here soon. And so in the procedure document, one of the important things to look at is what is eligible project-wise. And for the last couple of years, what you see here has been what we have funded through our direct grant program. That includes obstruction removal and mitigation, as well as reporting. So tree removal, that sort of thing. Runway and taxiway markings are eligible. Airport lighting rehabilitation, which includes both runway and taxiway lighting systems, guidance signs and pilot controlled lighting equipment. We also have navigational aids, which include beacons, runway end identifiers, PAPIs, VASIs, and approach lighting systems, as well as AWAS. And then pavement work, which includes pavement resurfacing, rehabilitation, and reconstruction of existing runways, taxiways, and aprons. It's important to note that we are still maintaining existing pavement. We're not doing expansions still at this point. And then anything outside of those projects that are listed here, if you have a project that does not fit into one of those categories, it can be considered on a case-by-case basis. So always encourage people to ask questions, talk to us if you have something that doesn't necessarily fit into one of those things. So for the direct grant program, like I said, they are competitively scored, and we consistently get questions about how do I increase my score, or how is a score determined in order to get the best project, the best score for your project to get funded. So with the direct grants, all complete grant applications and complete, we're not really getting into what all is required for a grant application. This point, that information is available in the procedure document on Black Cat. But assuming you've submitted a complete application and it's an eligible project, the projects get scored according to the criteria that we're about to go over. So each grant will receive a score. The maximum score possible is 100 points. And from there, once all the projects are scored, on a 0 to 100 scale, they're ranked in order of the score, and then the highest ranked projects get awarded based on the available funding. So if we have, which we do, we have a finite amount of money. We'll take and apply that money to the highest the highest scored projects possible. We do have discretion, or Jim, our administrator, has the discretion to deviate from that process. But as we've talked about, that's not used very often, only a handful of projects. So essentially, we rely on your scoring in our project selection almost exclusively. So the scoring is based on 6 different categories. They're listed here. That 100 points is a total of the 6 categories. So if you look on the slide here, there's the first 5 categories are based on the project being submitted for. So those are, as I went over before, safety and obstruction removal, runway and taxiway marking, runway and taxiway lighting rehab, navigational aids, and pavement. So based on the type of project that is being submitted, you're going to fall into one of those first 5 categories. Each of those categories has a maximum of 40 points available. From there, the other 5 categories are applied to each project, and it's based on a number of different factors. So the type of critical based aircraft is worth 10 points. The number of based aircraft at the airport is also worth 10 points. The economic impact of the airport is worth 10 points. Pavement maintenance plan compliance is worth 20 points. And then the local share or the local match of the project is also worth a maximum of 10 points. So if you take 40 points from one of the first 5 categories and then categories 6 through 10 and add them up, maximum score possible is 100 points. So going through each one individually, for obstruction removal, we score the obstruction removal section based on the obstruction and essentially what it impacts. So we have criteria based on either airport hazard areas defined by the Ohio Revised Code 456308, or surfaces defined by Part 77, and airport design surfaces in the advisory circular for airport design. So one of the other things to point out here is if you're applying for multiple areas, say you want to clear all the obstructions on airport property at one end of the runway, and the obstructions impact different surfaces, we're going to take the most critical surface impact and apply it to the whole project. So looking through the breakdown of the 40 points, if the obstructions penetrate 5 feet or more into the approach surface or are located within 1,250 feet of the runway threshold, that will get the maximum score of 40 points for this section. Obstructions that are within the runway safety area get 30 points. Obstructions within the primary surface get 20 points. Obstructions that penetrate less than 5 feet into the approach or are more than 1,250 feet from the runway threshold get 15 points, and then obstructions in the transitional surface get 5. So this needs to be clearly identified in the application. What are the obstructions and what do they penetrate? Sometimes we get applications that, identify an area, and then maybe we have to go back and try and figure out, okay, well, which areas is this in the approach? Is it more than 1,200 feet, 1,250 feet away from the threshold? So this is really, kind of imperative on the application phase to identify something so that we don't miss something. You need to identify and make clear to us that this is something that is a runway safety area violation. It's an obstruction that needs to be removed because it's in the approach, that sort of thing. That's important here. If you don't identify it in the application, we're going to have to go back and try and do it ourselves, which is going to be time consuming, and possibly we might miss something. So it's best to identify what you're trying to remove and what is impacted. And again, if you have trees in the transitional surface and some other obstructions in the runway safety area that are being removed, we're going to score it based on the most critical, which would be the runway safety area, for example, the whole project. The next section for pavement marking projects, this is relatively straightforward. We're going to look at the condition of the pavement markings on the most recent airport master record, which is the 5010. And those markings are rated good, fair, or poor on the 5010. So pavement markings that are rated poor will get the maximum 40 points. Pavement markings rated fair will get 20 points, and then pavement marking rated good get 0 points. So take a look at your 5010. I'm sure everybody knows the condition of their markings, but you know, don't be caught off guard if your 5010 is 3 years old and it shows a good rating, but you know that they have declined since then. Don't be surprised if you get a rating of, if you get 0 points on this, if the 5010 actually says good. So if the condition is in fact different than what's published in the 5010, let us know, put it in the application, give us a call. If we need to come out and verify something, we can do that. But that is how we base those 40 points for pavement markings. And I guess too, with 5010s, there can be a publication lag. You know, if we come out and do an inspection, rate something as poor where it was previously rated as fair or good, maybe that was done, you know, a certain amount of time before the application and it hasn't caught up yet. That happens. So just be aware of what the 5010 says before you apply, so you're not caught off guard with a lower score. For airport lighting rehab, the score is based on the age and functionality of the lighting equipment. And the biggest key with this is documented maintenance. That's going to be key to getting a higher score. And we do base our scoring criteria on the AIP handbook, which gives the minimum useful life of all airfield lighting systems at 10 years. So with this one, systems that are 10 years or more in service that have documented maintenance are going to get the maximum 40 points. Systems that are 50 to 80% functional and less than 10 years of service with documented maintenance will get 30 points. Systems with 10 years or more in service that don't have any documented maintenance is 20 points, and systems less than 10 years of service but are 50 to 80% functional and don't have documented maintenance get 10 points. So the key here is really with the documented maintenance. What do you have that you can provide to us, whether it be invoices or service contracts or repairs? You've had to replace transformers, number of fixtures that have been replaced, anything that you can provide that shows that you have been maintaining the system and to back up your request to get it replaced. I guess what we're trying to avoid here is having somebody, having an applicant ask for a new lighting system when they haven't been maintaining anything. You know, the documented maintenance is really key here. systems that are old, if you don't know exactly when it was when it was installed, you know, anything that you can provide to show us the age of the system, you know, hey, I've been the airport manager here for 15 years and the system was here when I started. You know, that's generally good enough. If you have any kind of records of when the system was installed to kind of document the age, that's fine. But really the documented maintenance of what kind of effort you've been putting in, what costs you have experienced with maintaining the system, that's what we're looking here to get the highest score. For navigational aid rehab, pretty much the same as the lighting system. The scoring is, again, based on age and functionality. The difference here is the AIP handbook identifies 15 years as the minimum useful life for the nav aids. And again, systems with 15 years or more of service with documented maintenance are going to get the highest score of 40 points, and then it goes down from there, similar to the lighting. Only difference here is the 15 years instead of 10. Again, documented maintenance, if you have an AWAS and you have a service contract with a vendor, provide the contract or the invoices that you've paid as an example. Any kind of maintenance performed on a PAPI or anything like that, that's what we're looking for as far as documented maintenance. Scoring for the pavement condition. The pavement condition index, or PCI, is provided and published by our office. This is based on your periodic, hopefully 3-year inspection cycle on your PCI. So this is information that we pull from our records. We do publish the PCI on our website. The most current record should be up there. If not, reach out to our office and we can verify when the last inspection was performed and what the current PCI rating is for a particular piece of pavement. If the most recent data available is too dated or otherwise unreliable, if you know something is deteriorated maybe quicker than it would normally due to something that's occurred or some change, you can request a site visit or an updated inspection. We'll come out and take a look at it and kind of verify the PCI so that we're using good information when we're doing the scoring. Paving projects are limited to existing pavement only. As I said earlier, we're still not doing expansions or new pavement, new construction pavement. And we also exclude T-hanger taxiways or taxi lanes from the grant project eligibility. So we kind of prioritize the pavement projects based on the pavement classification. So runways are prioritized over taxiways, which are prioritized over other pavements. So taxiways and aprons. So runways with the PCI 54 or under get the maximum score. Runways with the PCI 55 to 69 get 30 points. Taxiways and aprons under 54 get 20 points. Taxiways and aprons between 55 and 69, 10 points, and other pavements that should be 0 to 75 will get 5 points, and then other pavements with 75 or more don't get any points. So take a look at your PCI map when applying, and you should be able to, based on that information, know what points your project's going to score based on this scale. And like I said, if you need more current information, just reach out to our office. So those were the first 40 points of the 100-point score. One of those sections is going to apply to each project. And then from this point on, each project is going to get scored based on non-project information. So the first of those section is the critical based aircraft. So these 10 points are based on the most demanding type of fixed wing aircraft currently based at the airport. And it's important to note that we don't include helicopters in this this category or other rotorcraft. Generally speaking, because the airport, the rotorcraft don't need to be based at an airport per se. So we're looking only at the most demanding fixed wing aircraft. So this information is it's included in your application, then we verify it based on state aircraft registration records or the FAA's aircraft inventory through basedaircraft.com. So a critical based aircraft being a jet, business jet based at the aircraft gets a maximum 10 points, a turboprop based at the airport gets 8 points, piston twin gets 6 points, and single engine piston gets 0 points on the critical based aircraft. So fairly straightforward there. If you want to get the maximum points available, I guess try and get a business jet based at your airport. For the number of based aircraft, again, straightforward here, but this is looking at the total number of aircraft, regardless of type, that are currently based at the airport. So this one can include helicopters. We're looking at the total based aircraft at the airport. And again, similar to the critical aircraft, this is verified by looking at state aircraft registration records and or the FAA's aircraft inventory. So the maximum number of points available here is 10. And to get that, you have to have 70 or more based aircraft. 50 to 69 based aircraft gets 8. 30 to 49 based aircraft gets 6 points, and on down from there. So this is, as we're looking at aircraft inventory, we're always talking, if you've had us for a 5010 recently, we're always encouraging you to keep your based aircraft current and up to date in the system. We ask you to look at it at least once a year. It's good practice to look at it before you submit a grant application to make sure your aircraft counts are good. So anytime there's a change, we want to make sure you're keeping that up to date, because that's what we're looking at when we're scoring these grants. We want our score to be based on what you actually have there, not some outdated information. Economic impact is fairly straightforward. These 10 points are based on the total economic impact of the airport based on the 2014 Ohio Airport System Plan. So this information is pulled straight off of the system plan. System plan is published on our website. Each airport has a economic impact brochure, and the total economic impact that's listed on that is what we use for this score. In the event, now this is based on the 2014 report, which was based on 2012 data. If you have something more current, if the airport sponsor has performed an update or any other kind of information that you have regarding economic impact, you can submit that with your application, and we will take it under consideration. If it does happen to bump you up, say from under 5 million to over 5 million, that could be 5 more points in your favor as far as grant scoring goes. So if you do have something, if you've performed an economic impact analysis locally, or as part of a different study, you can certainly send that to us and we'll review and consider it, like I said, on a case-by-case basis. So for this category, 5 million or more, or I should say more than 5 million of economic impact is worth 10 points, the maximum here. Between 1 and 5 million gets 5 points, and less than $1 million or $1 million or less in economic impact gets 0 points. So that one's fairly straightforward as well. Next, we have 20 points available in scoring for pavement maintenance. And this is one that we've changed maybe a couple years ago. The information that we ask for the applicant to provide should itemize all locally funded pavement maintenance activities that have been performed over the last 5 years. So what we're looking at here is what is the airport sponsor doing to maintain their own pavement? Are they compliant with their pavement maintenance plan? And we're asking, how much have you spent in local funds to do that? Pavement maintenance includes, but it's not necessarily limited to weed control. So herbicidal spraying throughout the airport, crack sealing, crack repair, spot pavement repairs, seal coats, and then can include overlays as well. So we're looking back over the last 5 years, how much have you spent on those activities? The local funds that are spent as part of the local share to an FAA or ODOT grant can also be included. So, you know, if the FAA funded a crack seal of the runway or a seal coat of your main apron, the local share that you put towards that FAA grant can be included as well. And ODOT grants, you know, we don't give grants for basic pavement maintenance, but if you do overlay a taxiway or something like that, you can also include your local share of that grant as well. So itemize those things, detail those in your application, and then we apply that total value of the last 5 years based on the total square yardage of pavement that you have on your airport. And so that's broken out down here in the bottom. So if you're spending 5 cents per square yard on pavement maintenance, or more than 5 cents per square yard on pavement maintenance, you get the maximum 20 points. Between 3 and 5 cents per square yard pavement maintenance gets 10 points. Up to 3 cents per square yard pavement maintenance gets 5 points. And if you submit an application, you have no documented pavement maintenance at all, that will get 0. So the one other note is that the maintenance activity must be on airside pavements only. So if you resurface the auto parking area, that's not eligible to be included, or something like that. And it also has to be airside pavement that's owned and maintained by the airport sponsor and is available for use by the general public. So maybe a corporate hangar apron that you know, the airport maintains, but generally is not open to the public for public use. We would tend to exclude that. So we're looking at what is the airport sponsor spending to maintain the pavement, airside pavement that's for use by general public.
John, this is Greg. Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Have you all determined that square yardage, or you rely upon the sponsor to submit it? And does it include those areas that are not eligible for participation in the state grant program, like T-hanger, taxi lanes, and those areas?
We base the total square yardage on our pavement inventory that we use for the PCI. So good question about the T-hanger taxi lanes. You know, T-hangers that are public leased, we don't fund those for grant projects, but if you do an overlay on those or, crack seal those, we can include that in the pavement maintenance scoring.
Great. Thank you, John.
Sure. And if there's a question, we try and going back to the PCI maps, we try and exclude the areas that are locally owned or privately maintained. We try and identify those on the PCI when possible, or exclude those, generally speaking, from the inventory when they're not airport sponsor owned and maintained. So if there's any question on a particular airport, we can look at it and kind of get on the same page there.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And then the last section for scoring the last 10 points is based on the local match. The local match is strictly how much of the project cost is being provided by the airport sponsor, and it's a percentage. So when we're, I put two different scoring charts up here. When we're at a, I guess, normal situation of 95.5, which we were fiscal year 2020 and earlier, in order to get the full 10 points, you had to contribute more than 20%. So 21% of the project cost would get you a 10% or a 10-point score on your local match. If you were between 16 and 20%, you get 5 points, and anywhere from 5 to 15% wouldn't get you any additional points. Last year, or the current year, I should say, for fiscal year 21, we were 100% funded, but if you opted to provide over 20% as a local share, you would get 10 additional points. Between 5 and 20% would get you an additional 5 points. So, we always say the easiest way to increase your score is to increase your local match. And we have some airports that do it all the time. And usually, or I should say, it could be enough to put you over kind of the hump between getting a project and maybe not getting a project. So the local match, if you can, if you have the ability to increase your local match, those 10 points often could mean not getting a project or potentially getting a project. So that's an overview of how we score everything. Like I say, once everything is scored, we rank everything based on the score, and then select the top projects that are available that we can fund with the available funding. So we like to tell people you should know your score prior to submitting your application. It's in the procedure document that's published in March. You should be able to go through each one, each section, and look at the criteria and see where you're going to fall. So you should know what your score is prior to applying. And then once everything is submitted to us, we're going to go through that process and rank everything. Like I say, you should know what your score is. You may not know what everybody else is submitting, but historically our cutoff, it's kind of trended up the last couple years based on demand, but generally speaking, our cutoff is somewhere in the low 70s, high 60s, low 70s. So maybe we'll say between 65, 75 as a cutoff for our scoring. Projects above that cutoff line are typically getting funded. Projects below that, typically not. Of course, it's all based on the amount of available funding and who all applies and how steep the competition is. A couple resources. I have links up here to our webpage, the ODOT webpage that has the grant program information. for all of the programs, the direct grants, the matching grants. We did change our webpage. It looks different than what it looked like in the past, but all the information is still there. There is a link as well to the focus study for economic impact. Those are all listed. There's a map with the airports throughout the state. Just click on your airport and you can bring up your economic impact study. And also a link for Black Hat Aviation, which I think everyone's familiar with at this point. But all of our grant applications are going through there, and the scoring as well is done in Black Hat. Our contact information, we do have the ohio.airport.grants email address. You can use that email address for sending in questions, for pay requests, that sort of thing. We all have access to it. There's my contact information, phone number, email, as well as Russ Neese. We're the two contacts for the grant program. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to help you out any way we can. So that concludes the information I have. Stacy, if you want to go through any kind of questions that have come in.
Yeah, I actually have not seen any questions come in. It seems like everybody is off camera and muted. At this point, if anybody has a question, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask John any questions that you may have.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Sprang at Dayton International. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering, how can I see, Russell was nice enough, he sent me the scoring for everybody, the total. How do I see the breakout of how we scored with these individual categories for myself? Can I get that?
Sure. Yeah, just contact either me or Russ, and we'll go back and provide you how each project scored, or a particular project if you're interested in one in particular.
Okay, and also when I'm doing my application, when I'm doing my application, I just noticed all of the other airports, you know, I was doing the percentage for their splits. I was always told to put the project value to include the cost that we have to fund locally that you won't pay for, so that you have like an idea of what the total project cost is. But looking at these numbers on the report I got, it doesn't appear that anybody else is doing that. It looks like they're either doing, you know, just 100% of what they know you're going to pay for, and then just, you know, the percentage share. Because they're all working out to 95 or 79%. You know, we're the only oddball one, because I do include, I thought you wanted to see the total project cost, even things that you will not fund that we're going to fund. So am I doing that wrong?
No, not necessarily. You know, we're looking, when we score something, we're only scoring based on the criteria that's in the procedure document, what we went over today. So the total project cost at the application stage doesn't necessarily matter as much until we're getting into, say, a project cap amount. For instance, for fiscal year 21, we capped all the projects at 500,000. So we do ask for a cost estimate at the application stage, but as far as ranking and scoring the projects, the project cost doesn't come into play. We're looking essentially at the merits of the project based on the criteria that's in the procedure document. Now, if you have a project that gets selected or an offer, then we're going to look more in detail at the project cost, make sure everything's eligible, what's eligible, what's not. If you're asking for, you know, a project that exceeds the cap amount, for instance, this year was 500,000. So if you're asking for $1 million project, we're going to talk to you about phasing it potentially, or or we have X number of dollars available, can you reduce the scope or put it in phases to kind of meet our available funding. But as far as the scoring goes, the project cost really is not a factor.
Okay. And you said no T-hanger, taxi lane, or taxiway, but in the points it mentioned taxi. I think it mentioned taxiways. So is there like a difference there?
So for pavement projects, T-hanger taxi lanes are not eligible for direct grant funding.
Taxiways are.
Taxiways are correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so parallel taxiways or taxiways elsewhere on the airfield are included. The T-hangers, the pavement in between the T-hangers, generally speaking, what the FAA classifies as taxi lanes, generally, yes, they're generally airport owned and maintained. The T-hangers are available for public use. But we're looking, we exclude those generally because, they're only serving the tenants of the T-hangers. So our limited resources are, in our opinion, better served on the areas that serve more of the general public that's using the airport.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that was it.
Okay.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. So we got one question from Kurt, and he says, so at my airport, I can easily get the 40 points for the project, but we are virtually zero on all the rest of the criteria. Is there any options for me?
Common problem. And this is where if you have a need for a project, like I said earlier, we have the ability, our administrator has the ability to select a project that's outside of the scoring criteria. We don't often use it, but there is, you can request special consideration for your project if you can demonstrate a need and a priority. Why would your project need to jump over other eligible projects that score higher? So we do have that ability. You can request it, and that would be, and certainly looking at the way our criteria is now, you're not going to go out, 1 year and increase your economic impact over $5 million, for instance, to get the highest score there. There are certain limitations built into the way we score the projects, but we do have the ability to consider other justification for a project. So reach out to us if you're in that situation, and do your best to provide as much information as possible.
Great, thanks. Okay, so to my questions that I have for you, John, they're pretty simple, but I want to make sure that we get them out there. So tell me, what are the most common errors that you find in an application that we can tell people, hey, make sure not to do this?
Lack of information when we're talking about, for instance, documented maintenance on lighting or pavement maintenance. We'll talk to people and say, well, we did, crack sealing and pavement repairs and lighting maintenance and all this other thing, but nothing gets submitted. And we'll say, well, why didn't you submit it? Well, we don't have good records. So keep good records, document everything, and put it in with the application. That's the biggest thing that hurts people, I think.
Sure. So I see, a majority of the people that registered for this webinar are consultants. So, hey, all you consultants out there that are on the line, make sure you start talking to your clients and ensuring that they are keeping accurate records. John, is there any other like watch out, don't do this that you've seen in the past that have hurt an airport project possibility for moving forward? Any common things that you want to share with them?
Just the lack of documentation is probably the biggest thing. Not really. I think we're fairly transparent and straightforward on how we select things. It's not very often that there's a lot of surprises. Of course, when you get $20 million in requests for $3 million in projects, a lot of people are disappointed. I understand that. But generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of surprises, I don't think, when we get to the scoring. We don't typically publish all the projects submitted in their final score. It's available if you really want to know. For instance, like Elizabeth asked, how did we score on each section, on prior years, so we know where we can improve. But I think we're pretty straightforward and transparent on how we do things. So, keeping your based aircraft records up to date is big. Documenting everything that you can, maintaining that documentation, getting it to your consultant. If your consultant is submitting the application, all those things, kind of to go forward to getting us the right information. And then, like I said, our scoring is pretty straightforward, I think. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, it is 5 minutes till the hour, and I'll just give one more request. If anybody on the call here has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, or send it in the chat box. Let's see.
Okay, I'll ask a question again. When you say, okay, so we have pavement, maintenance, and I've asked them for, the numbers and everything. What if they, store a material for a very long period of time, and they're basically telling me they use this number of bags and crack seal, and we can go out and look for what's the price of this by the bag, but I don't actually have the original invoice because it's that old. Is that something I need to upload, or with the application, the verification of this payment or the maintenance?
I would say just give us the best information that you have available.
Okay.
If it has to be based on an estimate, you have, for instance, maybe city crews performing the work. Even if it's an estimate based on a contract price, if that's the best information you have, submit that to us. I don't necessarily need the invoice if you bought a bunch of material in years past and you've been storing it in inventory and pulling it out as needed. I don't necessarily need the invoice from when it was purchased, but any kind of documentation that you have is better than nothing at all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.